think you drove into my dreams last night in a beat-up old car. You were riding with my friends. I thought, oh no, it's you again. See, I thought this story was over. I thought you moved away, unscrewed your license plates. When I dream, I connect the interstates.
Yo, dude! It's Yo, Dude with NJ! Yo, dude! Our Hypothesis Podcast Metropolis!
Welcome, everybody, back to the Yo Dude podcast episode number 10. And this should be the last one that I have to do by myself. Jay is tracking to be back next week, so we are super excited to be a two-man team again next week. So you look forward to having Jay on the show. And yeah, I always enjoy doing the solo podcast too. Love getting on here and just shooting the shit about a bunch of random stuff. It's pretty awesome. It's a good creative outlet, and I'm really having a blast with it. But I do miss Jay immensely. I like the back and forth. I like hearing his stories. I like just having a blast and laughing every time we do these things together. So, like every week, our show is brought to you by Uncle Larry's Pipe Stash, UncleLarry'sPipeStash.com. Uncle Larry is busy in the lab, obviously crafting up some awesome new pipes and replenishing his stock for a massive relaunch of his retail site. So once that happens, we will have a discount code which will pass along to you guys, which will help you save on your purchase over there on some handcrafted, made in the United States, awesome exotic hardwood pipes that you can use on the go. You can pre-pack them, take them with you, or you can just enjoy it around a fire at your leisure, watching TV, whatever you want to do with it. These pipes are the awesome solution for that, and they will make it look stylish and cool, and they're just made exceptionally well. So definitely check out UncleLarry'sPipeStash.com. They've been an awesome sponsor, and we look forward to continuing that for a long time to come and passing on that savings to you once we have that discount code. So keep an eye on that, and that should be probably in a couple weeks. So that's what we're hearing. I just wanted to let you guys know that. So now that we got all of the formalities out of the way, let's kick into some stories that we have. And I want to start with one that's personal to me because I love podcasts. I listen to quite a bit of them throughout the work week and throughout the week in general. I listen to a ridiculous amount of podcasts, a lot of hours. And my favorite is, two of my favorites, Pat McAfee Show and Heartland Radio. They were on the Barstool Sports Network. But as of Friday, Pat McAfee left Barstool Sports, and so he has relaunched. His first episode was yesterday. I am filming this on a Wednesday, so if it doesn't come out till tomorrow, it was Tuesday that Pat McAfee put out his first episode, and that is the Pat McAfee Show 2.0, which is pretty awesome. And Heartland Radio 2.0 comes out Friday, and then they'll figure out their schedule probably every other day or something like that. So, but it's a pretty big deal. Pat McAfee was a big get for Barstool Sports. Also, Pat McAfee left the NFL to go to Barstool, so it was a mutual helping of each other out, and it definitely brought both of them to more of an audience and helped both of them grow. I'm super excited, though, because when Pat McAfee left the NFL, a little backstory, which probably works perfectly for NFL Week 1. When me and my wife got married, we ended up setting our honeymoon off a couple months, and it just so happened that my football team, the Detroit Lions, and her football team, the Indianapolis Colts, were playing Week 1 that year, and so that was our honeymoon. We went to Week 1 of the NFL season in Indianapolis, which was a great experience because the Lions won. Happened to be Pat McAfee's last season opener. That was the last season he played. And then he retired to start Barstool, or start over at Barstool. And the rest is history. But ever since I've met my wife, almost, well, ever since me and my wife have gotten back together, we knew each other when we were very young in middle school and stuff. But ever since we've been in this relationship, which has been quite a while, I've followed her team just like she's followed my team, AFC, NFC. So no real competition there. And I'm a Lions fan, so there's no real competition ever. So that being said, I've always kind of followed Pat McAfee and the personality that he had, and I always thought it was funny. And you don't see too many punters at the time, especially with that kind of outward expression. So when you do like the Razor Ramon dance after, or the Conor McGregor, or just making big hits on on returners, all that kind of stuff, really cool. So I followed him. So when he retired, I'd known quite a bit about Barstool Sports. I did listen to some of the podcasts ever so now and then. But when Pat McAfee came over, that was big for me. So I was like, I'm going to listen to this. This is mine. And I had also just super gotten into podcasts. So for me, I definitely was drawn to that. And it's just an incredibly funny show. And the things that he says and talks about gives you a different perspective, because he has lived a not strange life, but experiences that a lot of people don't get to experience. And he's also talks about them in a way that a lot of people don't talk about them, because they're trying to position themselves to do something maybe with the organization or with the NFL after retirement, where Pat McAfee kind of just goes with what he feels is right. And that's kind of how he explains some of leaving Barstool as well. So I expect that this 2.0 version is going to be even funnier and even more Pat McAfee than it was before. And judging by episode 1 that I listened to twice already, I think it's going to be amazing. Tells stories about Ryan Grigson finding him for a social media post, which basically led to him knowing that it was time for him, he was going to retire, to talking about stuff that I was planning on talking about on this podcast, which I will probably at the end, about Colin Kaepernick, and just so on and so forth, seeing his ability to talk about his departure and all of that kind of stuff. You can tell that he is a guy who doesn't necessarily hold grudges. When he's done, he's done. And I can relate to that very much so. I think respect and being treated as a person and being treated right is a bigger value than all of the money in the world and doing the things that you want to do, which is why I do this podcast. Is this the biggest podcast ever? No, it's not the biggest podcast ever, but it gives me a way to get my creativity out and do something that I love. So I can totally respect someone doing that and walking away from hundreds of thousands of dollars right away to invest in themselves. So best of luck to Pat McAfee, obviously, on that. Fan for life here. I will listen to pretty much anything that they put out, including an incredibly funny Heartland Radio, which will also launch, like I said. That show was incredibly funny, and the people on that are super, super hilarious. So if you don't know about any of this, definitely go check out Pat McAfee Show 2.0 and Heartland Radio 2.0 once that launches, because I don't think you'll be disappointed. If you're a podcast fan and you're listening to this podcast, you will definitely love that podcast as well. So that being said, let's move on to something else I love, which is the WNBA. WNBA was out at a concert, which I will talk about a little bit later. So I didn't get to see the final 2 games until this morning. I did see the results, but I watched them through. I taped them. So I'm pumped. Both semifinals went to Game 5. So winner take all. and now you're going to be in the finals. You have the Washington Mystics versus the Seattle Storm, which are two of my favorite teams. I don't have an absolute team that I root for, just because we have nothing close, and the Detroit franchise is no longer a franchise, so I'm almost a free agent essentially. But growing up on the East Coast as well, Washington Mystics, I have caught a couple games there, and enjoyed them immensely. And my brother, who helped get me into women's basketball a long, long time ago, turned me on to UConn way back in the day. I mentioned it last week, but I actually wrote Rebecca Lobo a letter when she was in college at UConn, and she wrote back to me, which was pretty cool. I still have that letter, and that helped me follow UConn and then Tennessee and a bunch of women's college teams, and just watch as all of these players have graduated into the WNBA and played internationally. But the Seattle Storm have two of the best UConn players probably in history, which is Breanna Stewart and Sue Bird. They also had Lauren Jackson, who was one of my brother's favorite players. So we watched quite a bit of Storms games when we could, and so definitely like them. Also, my favorite current player is Elena Delle Donne. I love watching her play. She just kind of does everything. She's agile. She's agile, however you want to pronounce it. She blocks. She scores. She can steal the ball. She rebounds. She wants to win. And she also said recently that she only remembers titles. So for her being in the title game, I think she's going to go all out. And if I had to pick the team I want to win more, I'm probably about 60-40 Mystics and 40% Storm. It'd be nice to see either one of the teams win, which will happen, but definitely leaning a little bit Mystics if I'm being honest. So Elena Delle Donne's an absolute beast. She's super great to watch play. You have Sanders on a team, Tolliver, Atkins, as well as I'm blanking, but just a really fun team to watch. I watched quite a bit of Mystics games in the last 2 seasons, and they're super fun to watch. They have a really talented squad, and also the Storm aren't no slouch. They have obviously added Natasha Howard this year, and they already had Jewel Lloyd, but just two teams that are going to be fun to watch match up and play against each other. I can almost only hope for it to go the distance and come down to a winner take all. That'd be the best scenario, just so we get more basketball. I love the WNBA, and I think it's going to be an amazing series. Also, shout out to Lisa Borders, who, if you've been a fan of the show since week 1, you will know that I did a dinner for 5, where I picked 5 people that I would want to come to dinner and sit down and have a conversation all as one. And Lisa Borders was one of them. I think what she's doing as WNBA president is amazing and bringing more eyes to the sport. And obviously with the talent currently there, just it's a perfect storm of this league continuing to ascend to bigger and better things. So if you wasn't on your radar, it should be on your radar. WNBA Finals, I believe they start Friday. Definitely watch it. It's super fun. If you haven't watched many WNBA games, you should take the time to definitely check that out, because you're going to see a great one. So, and then moving on from that, so like I said, I went to a concert, which I will talk about after this, I promise. I got on my way home, because it was about 110 miles, I think, from where I was at to my house, just because of where I live. It's kind of weird in the city. About 2 miles from my home, I was pulled over by the cops, which is very interesting, especially since it seems like the only times I ever get pulled over by the cops is when I am coming back from a concert. It's happened now quite a few times. So the deputy that pulled me over was Deputy Dawson, which I thought was funny because Dawson's Creek fan, so I immediately thought of James Vanderbeek. Shout out James Vanderbeek. And shout out to anybody who's watched the show, because they know I mentioned Dawson's Creek 9 million times. Deputy Dawson was super nice. He pulled me over. The first thing I did was pull my driver's license out, and my title and registration, or my registration and my insurance, and I had my hands on the steering wheel. That's typical for me. It is very dark on the road that I got pulled over, like incredibly dark. And the cop pulled me over, and I wasn't speeding. I hadn't had a single thing to drink. I don't do drugs, just because of my job, and just personal choice that it's not my vice. But on this occasion I wasn't drinking, which I don't drink and drive either, but I hadn't had a single drink, so I wasn't worried about that. Wasn't swerving or anything. Both my headlights, which I checked before, because the last time I went to a concert and got pulled over was because my headlight was burned out and didn't know it. So I double checked that before I left. This time I got pulled over because my license plate light was burned out. So me and Deputy Dawson, who were the only two cars on the road at 12 o'clock at night, I guess it was, had an interesting conversation about that being an actual law. I didn't know you needed a light on your license plate in the state of Colorado. Apparently you do. So we talked about that a little bit. Essentially, he basically told me that the reason he pulled me over was because I was the only car. My light was out, so it gave him a reason to pull me over, just to check to see if I was drinking or driving, which is where I guess kind of the cop police officer situation kind of becomes a slippery slope. So he didn't give me a ticket. He told me from the start he wasn't giving me a ticket, which was nice of him, because he could have. I was technically breaking the law by not having a light, but really was just a check to make sure I wasn't impaired while driving. So I can see where some people would say, well, if he wasn't going to give you a ticket and he knew he wasn't going to give you a ticket, why would he pull you over? Which I can totally agree with, because it did, in any instance where you are dealing with a cop and you get pulled over, like I was last night. I knew I had done nothing personally wrong. I can't see, obviously, my light on my license. There's no indicator that says my light's out. So I didn't know it was burnt out. Unfortunately, that's part of it. That's probably why he didn't give me a ticket, too. So from that situation, I knew that I hadn't done anything wrong. Still, I was nervous, though. I mean, you still have the adrenaline pumping through. You're like, I got pulled over by a cop. Wonder why, So, and in the process of pulling me over, he was pretty close to me. Obviously, my light was burned out, so he was trying to get my license plate number. He was trying to get the lights on my license plate to get the number, which I totally get afterwards. But these are the situations where, had it been someone who had an attitude, or a cop who had an attitude, could have escalated to something worse. For, hey, why'd you pull me over? If you weren't going to give me a ticket, I'm not drinking, I haven't been drinking, I never drink, blah, blah, blah. Whatever it was, cop could have been belligerent back, and it could have escalated. So, I do appreciate that the officer was nice. I think that helps ease things. I came into it with a positive disposition, even though that I wasn't pumped on getting pulled over. I don't like the feeling of being pulled over, but it led to an interesting conversation that I do not mind having at any point with a cop, and kind of how things work, and also having family members that are in the law enforcement field, as well as people that are criminals in my extended family. That I wish there was it made me think of, I wish there was a more transparent, better way to handle some of these stops. Because in the short time from the time he flipped his lights to the time I got pulled over, there was an accelerated anxiety involved with it. So I guess going and talking about it is fairly tough, because this is where I'd like to have Jay to go back and forth with, but it's a situation that I think anyone can very easily. There could have been a number of situations where that ended very poorly, or it ended fine, like it did. And I'd like all of these to end fine. If it doesn't have to be bad, it shouldn't be bad, unless somebody, obviously they're tracking down somebody who did a murder, or some other stuff. There's no need for it to be a situation where there is anxiety. Cop was pretty lenient. I'm sure they probably let most people off because it is something that is kind of nitpicky, but he used it to double check and make sure that people were safe on the road, just in case I had been drinking and driving, which I totally understand. So just wanted to thank Deputy Dawson for that, and for explaining to me the law, and also giving me the opportunity to fix the situation without having to go to court and get, have a ticket or whatever. So all that being said, it's been a while since I got pulled over, so I was very shocked. I literally was like 200 miles driving yesterday, back and forth, actually a little over, and could have been pulled over at any point. Didn't get pulled over. Obviously it was dark, but when I headed home, it was dark, so I drove over 100 miles with the same situation and didn't get pulled over. But that things are the way they are, and they work out the way they work out for a reason. So again, Deputy Dawson, thank you for being cool, and just remember, if you get pulled over, try to be nice, because you can only control yourself. And I understand how, even if you're not in the wrong, or if you are in the wrong, either way, your actions are really the only ways you can control. So if you control your actions and you handle things in the right way, I think more than likely it will end in a positive light. That being said, let me kick into the concert that I went to, which was Carter Hulsey, who you can see here, Me Like Bees, and Gooding. It was incredibly awesome. I'll put some footage somewhere in here, probably at the end, that I took. They're phenomenal, talented musicians. Carter Hulsey has always been one of my favorites since I found his work almost 10 years ago, and I've known him about 9.5 years. He is someone I consider a friend. Ever since I went to his first concert, saw him in this little, really shitty bar in Charlotte, and went up to him. We actually exchanged phone numbers, and we've been friends pretty much ever since. And I've seen him in a number of different venues, from Allentown, Pennsylvania, to somewhere in Delaware, to obviously Colorado a bunch, back in North Carolina, in Virginia, you name it. I've seen him pretty much quite all over the place. So consider him a huge friend. I consider him one of the most talented human beings musically that I've ever met, or had the privilege to listen to. He's a great singer-songwriter. If you haven't had a chance to check him out, you should. Also, Me Like Bees, who I've seen now the last 2 times I've seen Carter put on a phenomenal show. They have a really cool vibe. They go really hard, and they kind of remind me a little bit of, and this is just my personal, Modest Mouse with like a little bit of Killers with like a folk bend. I don't really know how to explain it, but it sounds amazing. It sounds awesome. They got a really cool band. And then Gooding is just some good old rock. Dude can play the guitar like you wouldn't believe. He's also singing. He sings phenomenally. The songwrite's great. Bass player's amazing. Drummer's amazing. The other guitar player and singer, she had a voice of amazingness. Just voice was top notch. And just had a great time at the show. If you ever get a chance to check any of them out, definitely do that, because they are all great bands. It was an awesome time. I got to hang out with Carter a little bit and catch up, and it was well worth the drive to go see him and getting pulled over. I have a blast every time I see him. and am blown away every time, as you will definitely understand once you hear him. If you check him out, anything you hear on record, and this is something that I really feel, and it's not a slight to Carter. There's something about watching him live that even brings out even more. The records are amazing that he makes, but seeing him live just elevates it so much. So I absolutely love seeing him live and watching him do his thing live, because he is just incredible. So, and then moving on from that, Colin Kaepernick and Nike, big drama on the internet for putting out, making Colin Kaepernick basically the face of Nike, and the quote that was put across it about having a purpose and sacrificing everything for it, essentially didn't seem to sit well with quite a few people, which is totally understandable, and totally understandable the other way. And I don't want to get really into the sides of it, because I think that's what everyone else is going to touch on probably. The thing I really would like to kind of talk about is from a brand perspective. Nike being such a big company is what I find interesting. Usually it seems like big companies don't really want to shake anything up, and knowing that Colin Kaepernick is a very controversial figure at this point, whether he should be or not is not what I'll get into. He is, though. He has created a big controversy, split people down the line on the national anthem issue, kneeling and all that kind of stuff. For them to make him a big face of the brand is an interesting play, just because Nike is so big and has such a demographic that it can be very alienating if you have a viewpoint against Colin Kaepernick, which quite a bit of people do. And then also, I guess, in the opposite way, you have people who will defend Colin Kaepernick's side of it and may then be drawn to Nike even more. So, that being said, it's just it's a very interesting move, especially if you start to look at the fact that other companies are slowly catching up to Nike, it seems, as far as popularity. Like, obviously, Steph Curry's made Under Armour a more viable product. Adidas has become a more viable product. Nike is still obviously the top dog, but making an interesting move like that at a time like this does seem a little strange, but also may work in their favor. I won't go on either side of it. I just don't care to get into the politics of it, honestly. It's something that I know is very diverse, and I honestly don't have a really hard stance opinion on it. I do know quite a few people who are, like I said earlier, part of the police, or served in that way, served in the military. So I know people that are personally offended that he kneels. I also know people who are with him that he doesn't, that he was kneeling, and that he started this whole trend of doing it for a cause. So, out of respect to all of those people, I will defer my opinion. I don't think that it should get the play it gets, because at the end of the day, if people, my opinion on it is, if people who don't like it would just ignore it, it would probably go away. But also on the other end, the people who are doing it for a cause for the most part, and it does bring us to a talking point of why things happen. So I see the good and I see the bad. I see both of it. So it's a very interesting topic to broach, and it'll probably take quite a longer podcast that would involve writing down points to make sure I got everything that I wanted to say in on it. But at the end of the day, more so interested that Nike would make the decision to pick somebody so controversial to launch an ad campaign. Also, the fact that Nike is the official gear of the NFL, and this is kind of quite against its own, not biting the hand that feeds it, but it's definitely two companies that are coming together to make a bigger play and sell more merch, not working on the same page there. Obviously, NFL has an issue with Colin Kaepernick. Nike is fine with Kaepernick. Nike is also partners with the NFL, so there's a very weird sliced pie there that of allegiance to each other and working together there. So that'll be interesting to watch how that plays out. I saw somewhere today that Colin Kaepernick's doing the voice work for a commercial that's supposed to air tomorrow for the NFL opener, which has Nyjah Houston, skateboarder, in it. Haven't seen the commercial yet, but that should be interesting to see how that goes over, obviously playing during the NFL. But I would assume people that are really, really mad about the kneeling have already stopped tuning in. So I don't know how much of a ripple it will actually cause. But the collusion trial stuff with Kaepernick will be interesting to see how that plays out with Nike, NFL, and all that kind of stuff. So, speaking of NFL, since we've kind of gotten into it, week 1 does start tomorrow or today, depending on when this is released. Colin Kaepernick will be doing a commercial during week 1, which is interesting. But week 1 is kicking off, and I'm obviously a huge Lions fan. One of the big news, Khalil Mack gets traded to the Bears from the Raiders. It seems like John Gruden's doing everything he can to just torch, dumpster fire the Raiders. Cut obviously one of the best punters in the league. Trades one of the best defenders in the league. Got Martavius Bryant, and he looks like he's gonna be out for quite a bit after they release him for a suspension. So not looking super good over there. But it's the Raiders, so when you hire these coaches, a lot of times it doesn't really work out. It'll be interesting to see how John Gruden handles it all, though. So far, just preseason. But we'll get into all of that. You'll see. I think it's going to be an interesting football season because you're going to have a lot of younger talent coming up, plus a lot of talent in the twilight of their careers, and then a lot of big talent kind of in the peak of their careers. So you're going to have some interesting storylines and some interesting plays. But I think this is honestly the last couple of years. Football's been a little bit, I want to say boring, but obviously with the kneeling issues and stuff, that's kind of overshadowed the play in a lot of ways. But with this season coming up and having the talent really rise up, almost like I said last year or last week about WNBA, I think it's going to be a really interesting season to watch some of these newbies come in and try to take jobs from the vets and do a really interesting job of some teams trying to have a franchise quarterback, but also draft as a quarterback. You got Drew Brees and Roethlisberger towards the end of their career. Flacco. Got a lot of those situations that you're going to be looking at, and so week 1 will be interesting, as well as all the further weeks. I think we have a really good chance to have some awesome play this year, and I'll be interested to continue talking about that. Jay is not a huge NFL fan, but I'm pretty sure we'll probably talk about it quite a bit on here. And another one I want to touch on was NASCAR. So NASCAR, I know if you've watched this, you've heard us talk about NASCAR quite a bit. One of the big teams is going to cease to be a team next year. The team that has Martin Truex Jr., which is based in Colorado, and the only team that's not based basically west of Carolinas, is going to cease its operation. It's sad to see them go because they did win a championship last season. They are the reigning champs currently. And Martin Truex is like third place in the points. It's an interesting look for NASCAR. They obviously, I think they lost a sponsor, and therefore the cost is elevated and just not worth the reward, I guess, at this point. So they will cease to be a team next season, which will make it interesting to see where Martin Truex goes. So you don't really see that too much in a lot of other sports. These are teams that are individually owned, but it's not like the Cowboys are saying, hey, we're not going to be a team next year. We just don't have the money to pay our payroll or whatever, So interesting plays. You do see those teams get sold off in those situations, and then they continue to be a team. But NASCAR is a whole different animal. So we will continue to track that throughout the season. But did want to end on something I saw right before I started this pod. I am a pretty big superhero fan. I do love superhero movies. My brother, big comic guy as well, and you may have seen it already, but Brie Larson gave, I think it was EW, the first look at the new Captain Marvel, her in her Captain Marvel outfit, and shit looks pretty good. I mean, I'm pumped. Captain Marvel is going to be an interesting play, which is going to play into the whole Ant-Man and Wasp, I think, is going to launch Captain Marvel, and then Captain Marvel, and then you're going to have the follow-up to the Infinity Wars. So it'll be interesting couple years for the Marvel Universe, and from the looks of Brie Larson, it looks like it's going to be a damn good one, too. So that's all I got, really, this week. Definitely interested to see what you guys would like us to talk about. If you have any questions, definitely feel free to contact us. Follow us, rate, review, subscribe, and we'll be back next week, full force, me and Jay, talking some awesome stuff. Hopefully I won't pin Jay in, but it is tracking for it to be next week. So definitely be back next week, and thank you for listening. We're 10 episodes in, and we're going to continue going strong and have hundreds more. So be good, have a great week, and go out and listen to Pat McAfee Show, Heartland Radio 2.0, and Pat McAfee Show 2.0. Me Like Bees, Carter Hulsey, Gooding. And before I die, I'm going to take a drink over here and call it a show. So see you guys next time. Hit me up on Twitter. Hit us up on Twitter, Instagram, at the names below and above. And have a great week.